Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have some absolutely terrifyingly mind-blowing encounters to share with you. Before we get into these encounters, a couple links I'd like to share. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and now my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version. Written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny, are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The links to those are in the description as well. Last but not least, I apologize for my throat sound here, and if I mess up any bit tonight, I am completely destroyed right now. I am burning up and sick as a dog, but I have nothing else to do as my daughter is sick too, and I've got to stay up and take care of her, so I figured I might as well record for you. Now, let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first encounter. It was back about 4th grade, I believe. I couldn't have been any older than 8 or 9. I lived in the country, near a small Minnesotan town called AUDIOBOOK, and it was pretty out in the middle of nowhere. At about 6:50 in the morning, I got on the bus like I would any other day to head to school. I had an hour-long morning ride and an hour-long evening ride. About 3/4 of the way through, we went down a side street. A kid named Jacob lived there, and there were about 3 houses total on that street. In between the houses were open fields. As Jacob was picked up, I looked on the opposite side of the road and saw 3 figures, like I had never seen before, next to a white house. They were black, long, and lanky. They almost looked like panthers, but in a distorted way. They were much bigger than panthers, and their faces were almost pointed at the bottom. They looked almost reptilian. It was difficult to see details in the morning fog. They were crawling on all 4s, and one of them looked to be a bit smaller than the other 2. One of the big ones walked ahead just a little bit and waited for the other 2 to catch up. They disappeared behind the house. I scrambled for my little BlackBerry, hoping to catch a picture, but as we moved away from the house, there was no sight of them. I thought about what I had just seen, and didn't particularly know what to think. I told my friend Erica about it, and she didn't flat out tell me she thought I was lying, but I could feel it. The house is gone now. It must have been demolished, as it was fairly old and looked to be in fairly bad shape when the incident occurred. Though I am not and have never really been religious, I did have a fair amount of strange occurrences in my childhood, this being one of the biggest. For the past 7 years or so, I pushed it back to the back of my mind, but every now and then it'll come up. I thought about this experience and thought I would like to tell some people about it. If anybody has any clue of what this could be, please let me know. Today's second encounter. I was over at my friend's house late at night and decided it was time to head home, so I left for my long trek back. As I entered the back roads, which were a big shortcut to my house, I saw something enter from the left side of the end of the road. It was a T-section, and as I saw it, it saw me. It just stood there staring at me. It looked like a gigantic canine of some sorts, a wolf or a dog or what have you. It felt, though, as time stood still, this thing scared the shit out of me because I thought at any second it could start running at me and eat my face. I stood as still as possible and got my phone out and called everyone I could. My friend's house, who I had just left, my brother, my mom, everyone I could think of to come and save my ass. No one picked me up, and not one of them ever asked about me calling them in the middle of the night. So I did what I thought was a smart move and went and hid behind some trees to my left. Eventually, this thing then went to the right and vanished out of sight. I very cautiously walked toward the intersection as I needed to in order to get home. When I got to the intersection, there was no huge canine to be found, but there was a car at the stop sign to my right, the same direction the thing had disappeared into. It was dark, but even with that being so, the person driving the car looked to be a shadow. I couldn't make out any facial features of any kind, just everything all black. The car stood there as I walked, which spooked me even more. It began to slowly follow me, which caused me to flip out at whoever it was in the car, and told them that I would kill them if they tried anything. They passed me very slowly, but then waited at the next stop sign, not even 50 feet from me. I once again told them that I would literally kill them or die defending myself. After what seemed like forever, they eventually took off. To this day, I have no idea if that person in the car was some kind of sicko or some kind of something else that I didn't understand. The reason I believe this specter showed itself to me was to get me ready, to become animalistic in an attempt for survival, because I was going to need that energy, given what was waiting for me at the end of the road. But I don't know, though. What do you guys think? A brief interjection on that. There's been multiple cases, as a lot of you know who have been with the channel for a while, of specter canines that actually have caused people to divert what they were doing, and if they had continued doing what they were doing, something bad would have happened. So it's very plausible, very, very plausible. Do I think 100%? No. Do I have a clue? No. Is it interesting? Oh yeah. Moving on. Today's third encounter. I live in eastern Washington state, and all of my life I've always wanted to experience something unnatural. On this night, I had just finished playing Among Us with some friends on Discord, and I went to my living room, for I guess my kitchen, they're both connected, and grabbed a glass of water. I looked at the orchard, and we have a small chicken coop in that orchard, and underneath one of the apple trees to the right of the chicken coop for the small chicks, I saw a pile of sticks that I'd never seen before, and thought that was weird. I looked at it jokingly, and I was like, oh, it's like a gnome or something, since I had recently heard a story about them. And then I felt this feeling of being watched. So I went around the cupboard to peek at it, and I got this disgusting feeling of dread I had never felt so small or weak before in my life. I never thought I'd feel something so wrong. I felt like I was being hunted. I felt like an animal. I started heading toward my room, and I looked back, and I felt so wrong. I can't get over the feeling of horror that I felt while looking back at that window. I messaged my friend on Messenger about it, and I started hearing a bump on the window. He told me to record it, so I started to record it, and it happened again. I know there's no trees by my window. The closest tree is a pear tree. It's about 4 yards away from my window. I cut that thing every year because cutting the grass around that thing is miserable. I know that the pear tree did not touch my window, but what assured me was that dreadful feeling was there, and that it left me small. I tried to ignore it. I tried to watch something. I needed to fight that feeling of fear. I even tried to ask for help, but my parents' room is on the way by that window, and when I peeked at it, it felt wrong. I ran back, and that's when I heard it. I heard this beating. This beating was like a heartbeat. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. I think it was on my roof. I got scared, so I hid under my covers like a little bitch. I was scared, and I had never been so scared in my entire life. The closest feeling when I got assaulted by a bunch of dogs when I lived in Peru. And that's when I started hearing its moaning, this horrid moaning. I asked my friend what I should do, and he told me to record it. And I did. I started to record it. I sent it to him. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a man or an animal. Then I felt my covers move by my leg, and it grabbed my leg and picked me up with one arm. Or I don't know what, its appendage or some fucking thing. It was a mess. How could it grab hold of me with its entire arm in my small room? I saw its face illuminated by my aquarium light. It was vibrating. I don't know what it was or how to describe its face. I just can't. My body shakes and goes numb when I think about it. I know it had a mouth. It laid me on the ground off to the side of my bed and put its big arm over my chest and put its mouth next to my face. And it said in the most unperfect English I could have ever heard. It was like if a dog decided to speak. It sounded so wrong, but it was so fucking perfect. It told me, you told me don't peek. And as abruptly it came, it left. I don't know how it got into my room. I feel so unsafe, oh my God. How did it get into my room? How, I don't know. All my life I wanted to feel high. I wanted to see something unnatural, something supernatural. I've never been religious. But what it said this night fucked me. I don't know what it was, and its face left me intact, and no, I was not in sleep paralysis. It moved me. It moved me from one place to another, and I just sat there shaking. I pissed myself. I don't know what to do. I've never been so afraid in all of my life. Sorry for how messed up this sounds. This really did happen. Here is the sound that he recorded that night. Today's fourth encounter. My name is Eli. I'm 22 years old now, and I've always loved being outdoors in the woods. I remember about 9 years ago when I was 12 or 13, my family moved to Minnesota to help out my grandparents. They were getting up there in age and couldn't run the farm like they used to, and just for a change of scenery. A year or so after the move, my two brothers and I got into the habit of running around the edge of the woods along the backside of the property and exploring where we probably shouldn't have. With that, after school one day, me and my brothers got our stuff and made the 400 to 500 yard walk to the forest behind the house. My brothers decided to take off and run ahead about another 300 yards in front of me, playing tackle and just being rambunctious, while I noticed a bundle of flowers that my grandmother would have loved. As I just looked at the flowers, I heard a bit of rustling in the woods about 15 to 20 feet to my right. I didn't think much about it because, it's the woods. So I shook my head and went and grabbed a bunch of flowers to give to my grandmother. No sooner as I reached my hand out to grab them, in my brother's voice, someone called my name for help. It sounded just like my little brother, except it was just a bit off, like it was being played by a recording. I immediately froze because I looked up and noticed my two brothers were a ways ahead of me. I remember calling for them to hurry up and come with me to the house, and as I turned to run up to the house, I noticed a lone coyote moving in between some old beat-up trucks that my grandfather had parked in the pasture on the edge of the woods. But this coyote was considerably larger than any one I'd ever seen up until that point. And what struck me as odd was this coyote looked like it had gotten hit by a car. And I swear when it moved around the trucks, it looked like it had its paws on the side of the truck, like it was trying to look over the truck at me. I couldn't help myself and I yelled, "Hey!" to it. And we sat for about a minute or less just staring at each other. Before I could turn and start back walking to the house, I watched this thing lean around the truck and say in my brother's voice again, "Hey!" When this happened, I yelled for my brothers and booked it to the porch of the house. As my brothers caught up to me, they noticed how pale I was and asked what was wrong. So I told them I saw a mountain lion, scared of being ridiculed for seeing something so ridiculously frightening. Later that night I was on the internet looking around and I found some encounters from people all over the United States with similar stories and an article about skinwalkers, which was both terrifying and interesting. This isn't the only encounter I've had with such entities. I just wanted to get my story out there as a bit of a warning that there are things out there that don't really make sense to the human mind. Today's final encounter. I was just talking to my boyfriend about some weird stuff I saw when I was a kid. He's a hardcore believer in skinwalkers and won't say it, or even let me say it after it gets dark in fear of attracting one. So my story begins. I was coming back from the store with my family. In my village, an entirely new neighborhood was being built. Mind you, I lived in an area that used to have a lot of forest around me, which has since been destroyed due to people building their houses. There was a dirt gravel road in the middle of the woods from the main road that led to a shortcut to my house. I was maybe 9 or 10 at the time, and I distinctly remember sitting in the middle seat in the middle row of our family's minivan. So I had a clear view in between the driver's seat and the passenger seat. I was talking with my younger siblings, goofing off, and I looked up to see it, crouched on the road. It looked exactly like the picture you get when you Google the rake. It had pale gray skin, it was freakishly slender, and it had eyes like reflectors. I freaked out and screamed, saying something along the lines of, "What the hell is that?" And both my parents turned around and asked me what I was talking about. I burst into tears and see it run over behind a tree. It was so tall. I see it peek from behind the tree a couple of times and explain what it looked like to my mom, well hysterical. My mom didn't believe me at all and got mad at me for trying to scare my siblings. Around that time, I used to watch a lot of those ghosts caught on tape type of stuff on YouTube. I'd show my younger siblings, which resulted in many nightmares for them. My dad, on the other hand, said it was probably just a deer. It looked nothing like a deer. I still remember those eyes when we passed by the tree I saw it run behind. Nothing was there. It was completely dark. I thought I must have imagined it. Until my dad told me he saw something too when we got home. He told me he saw something out of the corner of his eye, but didn't get a good look since I started screaming and he turned around to look at me. To this day, it still scares me, and I never walk too close to the woods at night. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed tonight's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Once again, I apologize for the screw-ups and if my voice sounded like trash. Thank you for all your support. I truly, truly appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to bid y'all farewell. I may or may not do another historical encounters in the paper tonight. I'm just too wiped out. Anyway, I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one. See ya.